The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the human ship. Harmony's Edge. Captain Dongmin stood at the main viewing screen, watching as the massive alien vessel approached. The ship was 3 times larger than his own and shaped like a giant spear. Black metal covered its surface, and strange symbols glowed along its sides. "Captain, they're requesting permission to dock," said Lieutenant Teho from the communication station. His voice was steady, but Dongmin could hear the nervousness underneath. "Grant them permission," Dongmin replied. "This is what we came here for." Dr. Sujin looked up from her research tablet near the science station. She had been studying everything they knew about the Veiltharan Empire for months. The aliens were known across the galaxy as fierce warriors who conquered other worlds. No one had ever successfully negotiated with them as equals. "Captain, the data shows they bring battle creatures to all their meetings," Sujin said quietly. "They use fear as a weapon." Dongmin nodded. He had read the same reports. The Veiltharans traveled with massive predators called shadow maws. These creatures were bigger than Earth's largest tigers and had never been tamed by anyone, not even their own masters. They served as both guards and symbols of power. "Remember, everyone," Dongmin announced to his crew. "We're here to show them that humanity deserves respect. Stay calm, stay professional, and don't show fear." Medical Officer Se-Young checked her equipment one more time. "Sir, I have medical supplies ready in case anyone gets hurt." "Let's hope we won't need them," Dongmin replied. The docking process took 30 minutes. During that time, the crew of Harmony's Edge prepared the main cargo bay for the meeting. They had cleared out all the supplies and equipment, leaving a large empty space. Tables and chairs were arranged in the center, with human and alien seating facing each other. Corporal Jinwoo and his security team took positions around the room. They wore their best uniforms and carried only basic weapons. The plan was to look professional but not threatening. "Incoming transmission," Teho called out. "Put it on screen," Dongmin ordered. The viewing screen flickered, and then showed the face of an alien unlike anything they had seen before. Queen Velthara had pale blue skin and large black eyes. Her head was longer than a human's, and her mouth was filled with sharp teeth. She wore a crown made of what looked like black metal and red jewels. "I am Queen Velthara of the Veiltharan Empire," she said. Her voice was deep and cold. "You will prepare to receive us. Any sign of disrespect will result in immediate consequences." The transmission ended before Dongmin could respond. "Friendly," muttered Engineer Hyan-Sik from his position near the door. "Stay focused," Dongmin warned. "Sujin, you're with me. Everyone else, remember your positions." 20 minutes later, the airlock opened with a loud hiss. The first thing to enter was not Queen Velthara, but one of her battle creatures. The Shadow Maw was enormous. It stood as tall as a human at the thigh shoulder, and its body was twice as long as a man. Its fur was completely black except for silver markings around its eyes and paws. The creature's muscles moved like liquid under its skin, and its yellow eyes seemed to glow in the cargo bay. Lights. Behind the first creature came 3 more, each as large and dangerous looking as the first. They moved with the silent grace of natural predators. Their claws clicked softly on the metal floor. Then came the Veiltharan guards. They were tall and thin, wearing armor that looked like it was made from the same black metal as their ships. Each guard carried a weapon that hummed with energy. Finally, Queen Velthara entered. She was taller than her guards and moved with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. Her black robes flowed behind her as she walked, and her crown caught the light from above. The lead, Shadow Maw, the one with the most silver markings, stayed close to her side. This was clearly her personal battle creature. "I am Queen Velthara," she announced in a voice that echoed through the cargo bay. "You will address me as Your Majesty. Kneel before the power of the Veiltharan Empire." Dongmin stepped forward. I am Captain Dong Min of the United Earth Fleet. Welcome aboard the Harmony's Edge. We greet you as equals seeking peaceful discussion. Queen Velthara's eyes narrowed. Equals? You dare to claim equality with the empire that has conquered 1,000 worlds? The Shadowmaws began to move restlessly, their yellow eyes fixed on the humans, and low growls rumbled from their throats. The sound made several crew members step backward, but Su Jin did something unexpected. Instead of backing away, she moved closer to get a better look at the creatures. Her eyes were bright with curiosity, not fear. "Fascinating," she whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "Look at their muscle structure. And those silver markings are beautiful." Queen Velthara turned to look at the human female, who showed no fear of her most dangerous weapons. "You are not afraid?" "Why should I be afraid?" Su Jin replied. "They're magnificent creatures. I've never seen anything like them." The lead Shadowmaw, the one closest to the queen, stopped growling. Its head turned toward Su Jin, and for a moment, their eyes met. The creature's yellow gaze seemed almost curious. "These are Shadowmaws," Queen Velthara said, her voice carrying a warning. "They have killed thousands of enemies. They bow to no one but their Veltharan masters." "They're incredible," Su Jin said, taking another small step closer. "How long? Have your people worked with them?" "Worked with them?" Queen Velthara laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "We do not work with them. We command them. They obey because they fear us more than they fear death." Su Jin frowned. "That seems sad. Such intelligent creatures, and they're only motivated by fear." The queen's expression changed. For the first time she looked uncertain. "Sad? They are weapons, tools of war. Why would their feelings matter?" "Because," Su Jin said gently, "every living thing deserves to be treated with respect. Even the most dangerous predator has emotions and needs." The Shadowmaw closest to Su Jin took a step toward her. Its massive head lowered slightly, and it seemed to be studying her face. "Kethver, return to position," Queen Velthara commanded sharply. The creature, apparently named Kethver, hesitated for a moment before obeying, but its eyes never left Su Jin's face. "Shall we begin our discussion?" Dong Min suggested, trying to move the meeting forward. Queen Velthara nodded, but her attention kept returning to Su Jin and the way Kethver continued to watch the human female as they all moved toward the tables. Su Jin noticed that Kethver was limping slightly on his front left paw. The injury was small, but it was clearly causing him discomfort. The real meeting was about to begin. But Su Jin found herself thinking more about the injured creature than about the political negotiations. Something about the way Kethver had looked at her made her want to help him. She had no idea that this moment would change everything. The negotiations began badly and got worse with each passing hour. Queen Velthara sat at the head of the alien side of the table, her 4 Shadowmaws spread around the room like living statues. Her demands were simple and impossible to accept. "The Veltharan Empire requires tribute from all species we encounter," she declared. "You will provide us with 50% of your military ships, 30% of your food production, and access to all your technology." Captain Dong Min kept his voice calm and professional. "Your Majesty, we came here to discuss mutual cooperation and trade. What you're describing sounds more like conquest than partnership." "Because it is conquest," Queen Velthara replied with a cold smile. "We have conquered over 1,000 worlds. Your Earth will be number 1001. Commander Teho, who had been promoted for this mission, shifted in his seat. "With respect, Your Majesty, humanity has never surrendered to anyone. We won't start now." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Queen Velthara's black eyes fixed on Teho with deadly intensity. "You dare refuse the Empire?" she asked softly. "Perhaps you need a demonstration of what happens to those who defy us." She made a small gesture with her hand. The 4 shadow maws immediately rose to their feet and began prowling around the room. Their claws clicked ominously on the metal floor, and their yellow eyes gleamed with predatory interest. Most of the human crew tensed and reached for their weapons. But Su Jin did something different. She stood up slowly and walked toward the nearest shadow maw. "Dr. Su Jin, return to your seat immediately," Dongmin ordered. But Su Jin wasn't listening. She approached Kethver, the lead shadow maw with the silver markings. The massive creature stopped prowling and watched her approach. "You're hurt," she said softly, looking at his front paw. "That must be painful." Queen Velthara stood up so quickly that her chair fell backward. "What are you doing?" "Step away from Kethver before he kills you." "He won't hurt me," Su Jin replied calmly. "Look at his eyes. He's in pain, not angry." The other 3 shadow maws had stopped moving and were watching the scene with obvious confusion. In their experience, other species either ran away screaming or attacked with weapons. They had never seen anyone approach with gentle concern. Su Jin knelt down next to Kethver, moving slowly and keeping her hands visible. "May I look at your paw? I'm a doctor. I might be able to help." The alien guards raised their energy weapons, but Queen Velthara held up a hand to stop them. She was staring at Su Jin with complete bewilderment. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Shadow maws kill anyone who comes too close. They are programmed for violence." "They're not programmed," Su Jin said gently, still focused on Kethver. "They're living beings with thoughts and feelings. Isn't that right, big fellow?" Kethver tilted his massive head to one side, studying her face. Slowly, carefully, he lowered himself to the floor and extended his injured paw toward her. The silence in the cargo bay was complete. Even the ship's engine seemed to have gone quiet. Su Jin examined the paw with expert care. There's a small metal fragment embedded between his toes. "It's infected. This must hurt terribly when he walks." She looked up at Queen Velthara. "Your Majesty, may I treat his injury? I have medical supplies that could help." "You want to heal my battle creature?" Queen Velthara asked, as if the words made no sense to her. "He's suffering," Su Jin replied simply. "No living thing should have to endure unnecessary pain." "Medical officer," So Young stepped forward with her equipment bag. "Doctor, I have antiseptic and surgical tools if you need them." "Thank you, So Young." Su Jin looked back at Kethver. "This might sting a little, but it will feel much better afterward. What happened next would be talked about for generations." As Su Jin carefully removed the metal fragment and cleaned the wound, Kethver lay perfectly still. His yellow eyes never left her face, and gradually, his expression changed from watchful alertness to something like trust. When she applied the antiseptic, Kethver made a soft sound that was almost like a whimper. Su Jin immediately began speaking to him in soothing tones. "I know it hurts, but we're almost finished. You're being so brave. Such a good boy." Queen Velthara's mouth fell open. "Did you just call the most dangerous predator in the galaxy a good boy?" "He is being good," Su Jin said, wrapping a soft bandage around Kethver's paw. "He's letting me help him even though it's uncomfortable. That takes courage and trust." As she finished the treatment, something extraordinary happened. Kethver began to purr. The sound was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder, but unmistakably a sound of contentment. The other 3 shadow maws approached slowly, their own expressions curious rather than threatening. They seemed fascinated by their pack leader's behavior. Corporal Jinwoo lowered his weapon completely. "I've never seen anything like this," he whispered to Engineer Hyan-Sik. "Neither have I," Hyan-Sik replied. "Look at them. They're not acting like weapons anymore. They're acting like pets." Queen Velthara sank back into her chair, her face pale. "This cannot be happening. Shadow maws do not purr. They do not trust. They only know fear and obedience." Su Jin stood up and gently stroked Kethver's massive head. The creature closed his eyes and leaned into her touch, purring even louder. Maybe they've never had a reason to trust before, Sujin suggested. Maybe they've been waiting for someone to show them kindness instead of fear. Kindness is weakness, Queen Velthara said, but her voice lacked conviction. The galaxy is ruled by strength and dominance, is it? Captain Dongmin asked quietly. Because what I'm seeing right now suggests that maybe there's another way. The second Shadow Maw, emboldened by Kethver's example, approached Sujin and gently bumped her hand with his head. She smiled and petted him too. What are their names? She asked Queen Velthara. Names? The queen looked confused. They are weapons. They have designations, not names. Everyone deserves a name, Sujin said firmly. Names show that you matter, that you're an individual. She looked at the four magnificent creatures surrounding her. If it's all right with you, Your Majesty, I'd like to give them proper names. Names that reflect how beautiful and noble they are. Queen Velthara stared at her for a long moment. Something in the alien's expression was changing, though she didn't seem to understand what was happening to her. Do what you wish, she said finally. But do not expect this softness to change anything. The Empire's demands remain the same. But even as she spoke, Queen Velthara couldn't stop watching Sujin interact with the Shadow Maws. For the first time in her long life, she was seeing her most feared weapons transformed into gentle companions through nothing more than human compassion. The negotiation was far from over, but something fundamental had already changed in that cargo bay. The foundation of everything Queen Velthara believed about power and control was beginning to crack. The negotiations had been suspended for 3 hours. Queen Velthara paced back and forth in the private quarters that Captain Dongmin had provided for her delegation. Her advisors stood nearby, waiting for orders that didn't come. Through the viewport, she could see into the main cargo bay where the humans continued their daily routines. But what disturbed her most was the sight of Dr. Sujin sitting on the floor, surrounded by all 4 Shadow Maws. The creatures that had terrorized countless worlds were lying peacefully around the human female like oversized cats. My queen, said her chief advisor, a tall Veltharan named Mortek. The humans refused to surrender. Perhaps we should simply take their ship by force. With what? Queen Velthara snapped. Our battle creatures are acting like domestic animals. Our most powerful weapons have been neutralized by one small human female and her inexplicable kindness. She stopped pacing and stared out the viewport again. Kethver was allowing Sujin to examine his bandaged paw, his tail swishing contentedly. The sight made something twist uncomfortably in the queen's chest. There must be a way to restore order. She muttered, the Empire cannot appear weak. An idea began to form in her mind. It was dangerous and unprecedented, but it might be the only way to salvage the situation and prove that Veltharan's strength still mattered. Summon the human captain, she ordered. I have a proposal. 20 minutes later, Captain Dongmin entered the Queen's quarters with Commander Taeho and Dr. Sujin. The 3 humans stood calmly while Queen Velthara studied them with calculating eyes. Captain Dongmin, she began formally, I invoke the ancient right of Morthuval. Dongmin frowned. I'm not familiar with that term, Your Majesty. It is a ritual combat that decides the fate of both our peoples, Queen Velthara explained. Single combat between champions, with each champion accompanied by their most trusted ally. The winner's people rule, the loser's people serve. That sounds like trial by combat, Taeho said quietly. Exactly, Queen Velthara confirmed. Do you accept this challenge, Captain? Or will you surrender now and spare your people the humiliation of defeat? Dongmin considered carefully. What are the exact terms? Each champion fights with whatever weapons they choose, assisted by one companion. The battle continues until one side yields or is unable to continue. The winner's species becomes dominant, the loser becomes subservient. And if we refuse? Queen Velthara's smile was cold. Then we return to our ship and bring back our battle fleet. Your choice is ritual combat or total war. Su Jin stepped forward. Captain, may I speak privately with you? The three humans moved to a corner of the room and spoke in low voices. This could be our chance, Su Jin whispered. I have an idea. But it's risky. What kind of idea? Dongmin asked. Let me be the champion, and let me choose Kethver as my companion. Taho stared at her. Su Jin, you can't be serious. You're not a fighter, and that creature, no matter how friendly he seems, now is still a predator. That's exactly why it might work, Su Jin insisted. She expects us to choose weapons and violence. What if we choose trust and friendship instead? What if you're wrong? Dongmin asked. What if Kethver turns on you in the combat circle? Su Jin looked across the room at Queen Velthara, who was watching them with obvious impatience. Then I'm wrong, and humanity finds another way to deal with the Veltharan Empire. But Captain, I don't think I'm wrong. I've spent hours with those creatures. They're not monsters. They're just afraid and lonely, forced to be weapons when they could be so much more. Dongmin was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. If you're certain about this, Doctor, then I'll support your decision. But I want the entire crew standing by with emergency protocols. They returned to Queen Velthara, who was drumming her fingers impatiently on the table. We accept your challenge, Dongmin announced. Dr. Su Jin will be our champion. Queen Velthara blinked in surprise. The female? She is not a warrior. She is our choice, Dongmin replied firmly. Very well. And your companion creature? Kethver, Su Jin said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Queen Velthara stared at Su Jin, as if she had just declared her intention to fly without a ship. You choose my own battle creature as your companion? If he's willing, Su Jin replied. The choice should be his. Shadowmaws do not choose, Queen Velthara said harshly. They obey their masters. Then it should be easy for you to order him to fight against me, Su Jin pointed out. Queen Velthara's eyes narrowed. She was beginning to understand the trap that Su Jin was setting, but she was too proud to back down now. Fine, she said. I will be the Veltharan champion, and my companion will be Mordith, my personal battle creature. He has killed more enemies than you have years of life. When do we fight? Su Jin asked. Tomorrow at midday. The combat will take place in your main cargo bay. All crew members from both ships will witness the battle. As the humans prepared to leave, Queen Velthara called out to Su Jin. Human female, you have until tomorrow to reconsider this foolishness. Mordith has never lost a battle. He will tear both you and Kethver apart without hesitation. Su Jin turned back with a gentle smile. Your Majesty, may I ask you something? Speak. When was the last time Mordith was happy? The question caught Queen Velthara completely off guard. Happy? He is a weapon. Weapons do not experience happiness. Everyone deserves to be happy, Su Jin said softly. Even battle creatures. Even queens. Maybe especially queens who carry the weight of an entire empire. She left the room before Queen Velthara could respond, but her words echoed in the alien ruler's mind long into the night. In her private chambers, Queen Velthara stood before a mirror, looking at her reflection. For the first time in years, she wondered what she might have been like if she had grown up in a world where kindness mattered more than conquest. The thought troubled her more than any military defeat ever had. Meanwhile, in the cargo bay, Su Jin sat with all four Shadowmaws, gently stroking their fur and speaking to them in soothing tones. She was preparing for the most important battle of her life, not with weapons or strategy, but with trust and love. Tomorrow would determine the fate of two civilizations. And everything would depend on whether compassion could triumph over centuries of violence and fear. The cargo bay had been transformed into an arena. Both crews lined the walls, creating a large circle in the center of the room. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Human crew members stood on one side, their faces showing a mixture of hope and fear. Veiltharan guards occupied the other side, their expressions confident and cold. Captain Dong Min checked his watch. 30 seconds until midday. Dr. Su Jin stood calmly in the center of the circle, wearing her simple blue medical uniform. She had refused all offers of weapons or armor. Her only equipment was a small medical bag slung over her shoulder, a cross. From her, Queen Velthara cut an impressive figure in her black battle armor. The metal plates were decorated with silver symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. In her hands, she held a curved blade that hummed with energy. Last chance. To surrender, human, Queen Velthara called out. I do not wish to kill you, but I will if I must. I understand, Sujin replied peacefully. But I believe there's another way to end this. The queen shook her head. You are brave but foolish. Where is your companion creature? As if summoned. By her words, Kethver padded into the circle. The massive shadow maw moved with fluid grace, his silver markings seeming to shine under the cargo bay lights. He took his place beside Sujin, sitting calmly at her feet. A murmur ran through the crowd of watchers. The humans had seen Kethver's gentle behavior over the past day, but the Veiltharan guards were shocked by his obvious loyalty to the human. Female, impossible, whispered one of the alien guards. Kethver shows submission to no one except the queen herself. Queen Velthara raised her blade and called out in the Veiltharan language. A moment later, her own companion entered the circle. Mordith was even larger than Kethver, with scars covering his black fur. His yellow eyes held a cold, calculating intelligence, and his movements spoke of countless battles. Unlike Kethver, who sat peacefully, Mordith prowled restlessly around his queen, eager for violence. Behold Mordith, Queen Velthara announced. Killer of 1,000 enemies. Conqueror of 10 worlds, he has never known defeat. Engineer Hyansik leaned over to whisper to Corporal Jinwoo. Sujin better know what she's doing. That thing looks like it could take on a tank. She knows, Jinwoo replied, though his voice carried doubt. She has to know. Captain Dong Min stepped forward to address both champions. The rules are simple. The battle continues until one side yields or is unable to continue. Are both champions ready? Ready, Queen Velthara declared, raising her weapon. Ready, Sujin replied softly, her hand resting gently on Kethver's head. Then let the combat begin. What happened next would be remembered as one of the most extraordinary moments in galactic history. Queen Velthara pointed her blade at Sujin and shouted a command in the Veiltharan language. Mordith immediately launched himself forward, his massive body moving like a black hurricane toward the human female. Sujin didn't move. She didn't run, didn't dodge, didn't even flinch. She simply stood there, one hand still resting on Kethver's head, and waited. But something unexpected happened. As Mordith charged, Kethver rose to his feet and stepped slightly in front of Sujin. He didn't attack or threaten. He simply stood there, calm and peaceful, between the charging predator and the human he had chosen to protect. Mordith stopped so suddenly that he skidded on the metal floor. His yellow eyes locked with Kethver's, and for a moment, time seemed frozen. Queen Velthara stared in shock. Mordith, attack! I command you to attack. But Mordith was confused. In his experience, other Shadowmaws always responded to aggression with aggression. They fought for dominance or submitted in fear. But Kethver was doing neither. He was simply standing there, radiating calm and peace. Sujin stepped forward, moving around Kethver's protective bulk. She walked slowly toward Mordith, her hands open and empty. Sujin, what are you doing? Captain Dong Min called out. Queen Velthara suddenly realized what was happening. Su Jin was walking directly toward the most dangerous predator in the galaxy, and Mordith was just standing there, watching her approach with obvious confusion. "Step back!" Queen Velthara shouted, and for the first time, her voice carried genuine concern instead of anger. "Step back! Mordith will kill you." But Su Jin didn't step back. She continued walking until she was close enough to touch the massive creature. Mordith's scarred head was larger than her entire torso, and his claws could have shredded her in seconds. "Hello, Mordith," she said softly. "You're beautiful. Look at those magnificent scars. Each one tells a story of your strength and survival." Mordith tilted his head, studying her with obvious confusion. In his long life of violence, no one had ever called his battle scars beautiful. "You must be so tired," Su Jin continued, her voice filled with genuine compassion. "Fighting all the time, never getting to rest, never getting to just be yourself. That must be exhausting." Queen Velthara lowered her weapon slightly. She was watching something that challenged everything she thought she knew about the universe. Su Jin slowly extended her hand toward Mordith. "May I touch you? Not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as a living being who deserves kindness." The cargo bay was completely silent. Even the ship's engine seemed to have stopped humming. Mordith looked at Su Jin's extended hand, then at Kethver, who was still standing calmly nearby. For the first time in his life, Mordith was seeing another Shadow Maw who was not afraid. Not angry, not preparing for battle. Slowly, carefully, Mordith lowered his massive head and allowed Su Jin to touch him. The moment her fingers made contact with his scarred fur, something extraordinary happened. Mordith's eyes closed, and he leaned into her touch. A sound escaped his throat that no one had ever heard from him before. A soft, rumbling purr. Medical Officer So Young put her hand over her mouth. She did it. She actually did it. But the most shocked person in the room was Queen Velthara. She stared at her most loyal battle creature, who was now sitting peacefully at the feet of a human female, purring like a contented pet. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Mordith has never shown submission to anyone. He barely tolerates me." Su Jin looked up at the queen with understanding in her eyes. "He's not showing submission, Your Majesty. He's showing trust. There's a difference." "I don't understand," Queen Velthara said, and for the first time, she sounded lost rather than commanding. "Submission comes from fear," Su Jin explained gently. "Trust comes from love. Mordith isn't afraid of me. He's grateful. To me. When was the last time anyone showed him kindness without expecting violence in return?" Queen Velthara's weapon fell from her hands and clattered to the floor. Around the room, both human and Veltharan crew members watched in amazement as the foundation of an entire civilization began to crumble. The battle was over, but it hadn't ended the way anyone expected. Instead of violence and defeat, it had ended with understanding and the revelation that even the most fearsome predators in the galaxy hungered for something more precious than conquest. They hungered for love. The silence in the cargo bay stretched for long minutes. Queen Velthara stood in the center of the circle, staring at her most feared battle creature as he purred contentedly under Su Jin's gentle touch. Her worldview, built over centuries of conquest and domination, was crumbling before her eyes. "I don't understand," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "How is this possible?" Su Jin continued stroking Mordith's scarred head while she spoke. "Your Majesty, may I ask you something? When you were young, before you became queen, what did you want to be?" The question caught Queen Velthara completely off guard. "What do you mean? Did you always want to be a conqueror? Did you dream of ruling through fear and violence? Or did you have other dreams?" Queen Velthara was quiet for a long moment. Around the room, both crews waited for her answer. "I wanted to be an explorer," she said finally, so softly that many people had to strain to hear her. I wanted to discover new worlds and meet new species. I wanted to learn about different cultures and ways of life. What happened to change that? Sujin asked gently. I became queen. And queens of the Vael'Theran Empire are expected to conquer, not explore. To dominate, not learn. I had to become what my people needed me to be. Captain Dongmin stepped forward. But what if your people need something different now? What if there's a better way? Queen Velfara looked around the room at the faces watching her. Her own guards seemed confused and uncertain. The humans looked hopeful but patient, waiting for her to make her choice. The Empire has existed for thousands of years, she said. We have always taken what we needed by force. It is the only way we know. It's not the only way, Sujin replied. Look at Mordeth and Kethver. They were trained to be weapons, but they chose to be friends. They chose trust over fear, companionship over loneliness. As if to demonstrate her point, the two massive shadow maws were now lying side by side, completely relaxed. The other two creatures had also approached and were resting peacefully nearby. Ambassador Yuna, who had been quiet throughout the entire confrontation, stepped forward. Your Majesty, what if we could show you a different way? What if instead of conquest, we offered partnership? Instead of tribute, we offered trade? Instead of fear, we offered friendship? You would trust us after what we have threatened? Queen Velfara asked, genuine surprise in her voice. Yes, Captain Dongmin replied without hesitation. Because we believe that deep down, you want the same things we do. Peace, prosperity, the chance to explore and grow without fear. Queen Velfara walked slowly around the circle, looking at each face she passed. The human crew members watched her with curiosity rather than fear. Even her own guards seemed to be reconsidering their assumptions about strength and weakness. If I were to consider this partnership, she said carefully, what would it look like? Engineer Hyan Sik spoke up enthusiastically. We could share technology. Humans are good at building things, and your people have advanced space travel. Together, we could explore parts of the galaxy that neither of us could reach alone. We could exchange cultural knowledge, added Medical Officer So Young. Learn from each other's medical practices, art, literature, music. We could establish trade routes, said Commander Teho. Both our peoples would benefit from access to new resources and markets. Queen Velfara was quiet for several minutes, considering their words. Finally, she walked back to where Sujin sat with the four shadow maws. Dr. Sujin, she said formally, I concede the ritual combat. Not because I was defeated, but because you have shown me something I had forgotten existed. What's that, Your Majesty? Hope, Queen Velfara replied simply. Hope that there might be a better way to live than the path of endless conquest. She turned to address both crews. I am still queen of the Vael'Theran Empire, and I still have the authority to make decisions for my people. Today, I choose to make a different kind of decision than any queen before me. The cargo bay was completely silent as everyone waited for her words. I formally withdraw all demands for tribute or surrender from the human species. Instead, I propose an alliance between our peoples based on mutual respect and cooperation. The humans erupted in cheers and applause. Even some of the Vael'Theran guards seemed relieved by their queen's decision, but Queen Velfara held up a hand for silence. However, I must warn you that not all of my people will accept this change easily. The Empire is vast, and many of our military leaders believe that strength comes only from dominance. There will be resistance. Then we'll face it together, Captain Dongmin said firmly. As allies. Together, Queen Velfara agreed, and for the first time since her arrival, she smiled. It transformed her face completely, making her look younger and more peaceful. Jin stood up, gently patting each of the shadow maws goodbye. Your Majesty, may I make one more request? Of course. The Shadow Maws deserve to choose their own paths. They've served as weapons for so long, but they could be so much more. Companions, partners, friends. They should have the right to decide for themselves. Queen Velthara looked down at Mordith, who was still purring softly. You truly believe they can be more than weapons? I know they can. Give them the chance to prove it. The Queen nodded slowly. Very well. From this day forward, Shadow Maws will be free to choose their own destinies. Those who wish to remain with the military may do so. Those who prefer a different life will be free to find it. Ambassador Yuna stepped forward with a formal document. Your Majesty, if you're agreeable, I've prepared a preliminary treaty outlining the terms of our alliance. We can sign it now and work out the details later. As the two leaders signed the historic agreement, Sujin found herself surrounded by all four Shadow Maws. They seemed to understand that something important had happened, and they were content to be part of it. Doctor, Queen Velthara said as she finished signing, I have one final question for you. Yes, Your Majesty? Would you consider coming to our homeworld as an ambassador? My people need to see what you have shown me today. They need to learn that there is strength in kindness, power in compassion. Sujin looked around at her crewmates, who were all nodding encouragingly. I would be honored, Your Majesty. But I have one condition. Name it. I bring friends, Sujin said, gesturing to the Shadow Maws. All of them. They're part of this new alliance, too. Queen Velthara laughed, a sound of genuine joy that no one had ever heard from her before. Agreed. Though I suspect they would have followed you anyway, whether I gave permission or not. As the two crews began to mingle and celebrate, Captain Dongmin pulled Sujin aside. You realize what you've done, don't you? He said quietly. You've potentially changed the course of galactic history. Sujin shrugged modestly. I just treated some injured animals and made some new friends. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the world. She looked across the room at Queen Velthara, who was tentatively petting one of the Shadow Maws while her guards watched in amazement. Besides, Sujin added with a smile, I think Her Majesty was ready for a change. She just needed someone to show her that it was possible. The Harmony's Edge continued on its mission, but now it carried more than just a human crew. It carried the seeds of a new era, one where former enemies could become friends, where predators could choose to be protectors, and where the simple act of showing kindness to a wounded creature could reshape the destiny of entire civilizations. In the weeks that followed, the news of the human Veltharan alliance spread across the galaxy. Some species were skeptical, others were hopeful, but all were watching to see if this unprecedented partnership would last. And in the cargo bay of the Harmony's Edge, Dr. Sujin continued her work, tending to the needs of four magnificent creatures, who had learned that they could be more than weapons. They could be friends, companions, and bridges between worlds. The galaxy would never be the same.